Well, I've shown this pantry before, and I will be doing more work on it, making some changes on it, but probably not till after I get the garden put in. So for right now, it's going to stay the way it is. But something that I think everyone needs to think about. Why would you do food storage? Now, I know a lot of people have paid more attention to it in the last year since the virus came around and there were shortages and runs on things. But why are you doing food storage? What is your goal? Is it for a couple weeks in case you get rained out, snowed out, flooded out, whatever? Is it in case of a health emergency or a job loss? If so, how long do you think you need? Is this for something long-term? And long-term can be whatever long-term is. It could be economic. It could be some kind of disaster that may be particular to your area. I don't know that. That's something you have to ask yourself. But why are you putting food away? That's something that I think is really important to talk about. I've kind of hinted at it, but I've mostly avoided the subject because there's so much out there. But I think it's worth talking about. Hello and welcome back. Today I want to talk about something that I'm hearing more about, and that's a good thing, and that is food storage. I think it's a very important conversation, and I think that everyone needs to think about it and come up with their own answers. Not everyone is putting food away for the same reasons. Is it going to be a short-term storage? Is it going to be long-term? Why? What type of things do you think you need to put food away for? What I want to talk about today is what food storage looks like for you. Why are you doing it? What are you doing? And more importantly, how are you going to use it? I don't know that that one gets talked about a lot. I recently did a collaboration and with a few ladies, and also left it open for anyone else. And it was #PantryRaid. And the idea behind it is you have food in your pantry, whether that's your garden, your refrigerator, freezer, or your dry pantry. What do you do with it? And I think that's a really important thing to know. I've seen people go out and spend thousands of dollars to get a year's worth of food storage in number 10 cans, all boxed up, sitting nicely on pallets. And that's great. They have food storage. Have they ever tried it? Have they ever tasted any of it? Have they learned how to make it? I think that any time you're in a challenging situation is not the time to be learning new ways of cooking. It's not the time to have that added stress, and it's not the time to make major changes in your diet. Your body is already in stress, your mind is in stress. It shouldn't have to have more added to it. So that is a step in the right direction because, yes, they have food. But is it something they'll eat? Are they going to get tired of it? What is the nutritional value of it? Is it full of sugars and things that you don't want? That's something to look at. I think a lot more of us take a much more varied approach to food storage. And I know that's what I do, and I know that most of my fellow YouTubers do also. Yes, we can our own food. Most of us have gardens. You sometimes purchase cans of food. You have dehydrated food. You have freeze-dried. You have your buckets of rice and beans. And I know in my case, those work for me because I mostly cook from scratch. I'm familiar with it, and it's what I like. If you're not familiar with it, you definitely need to either learn how or purchase what you already know and eat, because you need to keep your spirits up. And if you have a bunch of rice and beans and you never cook or eat rice and beans, you're probably going to get really sick of them. They'll keep you alive, but you'll get really, really sick of them. So I think that's a very important question to ask yourself. What type of food are you storing? Is it something that you already know and use and you like to eat? That's very important. How much do you need to store? Well, again, that gets back to how long a period of time you're preparing for it. Maybe you start right now with just 1 week. If you have not prepared before, you haven't put food away, get enough for a week. That's doable. You might be going for 3 months, 6 months, a year, who knows. But how much food do you need for you and your family for that amount of time? Now, that's going to vary: age, activity, health. There's a lot of variables in there. So I would look at how much you eat now, how much you need to buy to make that, and then multiply that out by a week. Then you can multiply it out further if you want. If you don't know what you're planning for, you really don't know how much physical activity there will be, and that can affect the amount of calories that you need. And to me, I'm not even going to go into that because there's too many variables. So that is another question. How much do you need? How long are you going to be preparing for? Again, how many people are there? And do they have any dietary restrictions or special needs? If you've got young children, if you've got babies, if you've got elderly people, diabetes, vegans, whatever, are you planning for that? Are you putting away food for that? Those are all considerations that I think each person is going to have to decide for themselves. And it gets back to store what you eat, not what anybody else does, but store what you eat. And then you need to eat it on a regular basis, because first of all, your body needs to be used to it. And you need to be used to cooking that. And that gets to my next subject. I see so many people that are saving all their recipes on digital, and that works great right now. But I know where I live, we can lose internet very easily. We don't usually, we have a good provider, but weather can definitely affect it. Other things can affect it. What happens if you can't get to those digital recipes and you're like, okay, now what do I do? For myself, I have a variety of cookbooks. Kind of like Mrs. Lori at Whippoorwill Holler, I collect them, and I have way too many at times. But I like having things tangible that I can look at so that if I want to make something, I can at least go get an idea. I usually don't follow the recipe completely, but I want to know most of the ingredients and I want to know how to do it. So I think having your recipes in hard copies is very important. And whether that's in books, whether it's printed off, handwritten, it really doesn't matter, however you'll use it. But if it's on your computer and things go down and you can't get to it, it's not going to help much, especially if these are recipes on how to use stored foods, such as grains, beans, rice, freeze-dried. How are you going to cook them? Learn how to cook with your food storage now. Even having those recipes in hard copies is great, but do you have everything you need? Do you have all the ingredients? Sometimes there's things that can make a big difference in a recipe that, ooh, I forgot that one. If you're cooking these things now, you'll know that, and you can then stock up on those also. Do you have all the equipment you need? If you buy grains, do you have a food mill? Now, you don't have to grind grains. You can use them other ways. You can make porridge. You can add it to soups. You can sprout it. There's a number of ways to use it. But it's something you need to think about now, not after something happens. And that comes to the question, how will I cook? And I get that really depends. We've had a number of times in the last 5 years or so that we have had to live off of what I have stored because of flooding, roads out, being snowed in, the virus, whatever. If it's something short term, nothing changes. I have food in my refrigerator and my freezer, not to mention my home canned goods, and to a small degree, some dehydrated and maybe even some freeze-dried for maybe some vegetables that I need. But for the most part, my menus don't really change. I can cook a normal, for us, meal for a little while, depending on time of year and other things. But what if this is a long-term event? If that's what you're preparing for, if that's what you're storing food for, how are you going to cook? As time goes on, some ingredients will get used up. Some will use more fuel to prepare. You can use a sun oven, or you can cook over wood or charcoal if you have them. But that's a consideration. How will you prepare your food? And how many people, again, comes into that. For myself, if there were something long and protracted, one of my main meals to prepare is going to be soup. And I can make soup out of almost anything, and I can make it taste good. So the thing about soup is it's nutritious. It stretches your ingredients. You can add so much nutrition into it and still feed a lot of people. I love adding grains and lots of vegetables to my soups. Meat, You can add some or not. What about broth? What about bouillon? Those things kind of need something for that extra flavor. So are you putting those away? What about your seasonings? I don't care what you're making. Salt and pepper is a start in my book, but it goes way beyond that. If you're going to eat the same type of thing over and over, you're going to get bored. I know I do. It doesn't take that long. Just the keto diet has been hard for me because it's the flavors, it's the textures. There's so many parts of it that to me are not the same, and I've made it work. But do I enjoy it as much? No, I really don't. I will eat it, I will prepare it because Brian is still losing, but it's not something that I enjoy a lot. But you need to have those seasonings. That is, like, to me, one of the most important things. So I have a healthy supply of herbs and spices, a few condiments, but mostly I work with ingredients, and you can make soups that taste amazing and stews. And yes, sometimes there will be more normal types of meals and casseroles, but if it were a long-term situation, soups and homemade breads, which are another thing you need to learn now. Don't wait till something happens. If you can make homemade bread using good grains, and if you can make flavorful soups, you can fill bellies and satisfy most people. And yes, soups would get old after a while too, but you can throw other things in there. But those two things with stored food can go a long time. So that's something to think about. Soups, stews, breads, casseroles. How many people you're feeding? How long do you think you might need it for? That's, to me, where to start food storage. And it's what I've done. That's how I got started years ago. And again, don't wait till something happens to try using it and tasting it, especially if you're buying pre-made meals like the Mountain House or something. Some of them are good. I've been backpacking and used some of their meals backpacking before I started doing my own stuff. But some of them I didn't like. It's not how I would cook. It's not the flavors that I like. It sounded good, but try anything you're going to want to use later. Try it now. Make sure you and your family will be able to eat it, that it meets your nutritional needs. And I will say, if you buy those pre-made meals, you're going to spend a lot more money. I prefer my varied approach with all the different types of food storage because it fits our tastes and it fits our lifestyle. But I just wanted to plant some seeds. I wanted you to think about these things. And again, don't try and do what I'm doing unless it fits your life and your family. Get ideas from me, get ideas from Mrs. Lori, get ideas from, there's so many people that you can watch their videos, read their blogs, learn from other people, but only take what fits you. So I throw a lot at you, but I think it's really important, and I really want everyone to make this a part of their lifestyle because things happen. And I see things happening around us now that concern me. I don't worry, but they do concern me. And it concerns me about the future in many ways. So I know for me, it's probably more important now than it ever was to make sure we have what we need, know how to use it. And in some instances, there will be people that I know I will help because of their situation. They won't be able to do what I'm doing. So that's another thing to consider. And to me, I'm going to call it charity because that's the biblical term. But remember the widows and orphans. Remember the elderly. Remember the people that may not have any way to put food away for themselves or the ability to do it. So remember them in your planning and give it some thought. It's not something that anybody needs to rush into now. And if you've already got food storage, that's wonderful. But again, put your thought into it now. Make your plan. Print out your recipes, buy your cookbooks, whatever you're going to do, practice it now. And if your family likes it, wonderful. And if they don't, ask them what they love or don't love. And hopefully you can change it to make it suit everyone. To me, storing food is biblical. Throughout history, it was necessary to put food away in good times for the bad times. Noah had to, Joseph, it's repeated over and over. The droughts, the famines, whatever the wars, whatever it was, there's always been a reason to have stored food. And it's only recently in our history that we have become so dependent on our grocery stores. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think we need to think more like our ancestors, even our recent ones, who had to plan longer term because you might have a garden this year and you might have an abundance. What if something gets your garden next year? What if the grasshoppers come back? There's so many things. What if there's a drought? What if there's fires? There's so many reasons that you might not be able to have a garden next year and put food away. And planning in that way makes sure that your family will eat and eat well. So I hope this gives you some ideas. I don't want to make anybody afraid because fear is not okay. It's never okay. Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. The Bible says it over and over and over again for many reasons. So I hope and I pray that you all are putting away food and that you're using wisdom in this coming days, that who knows what's going to happen. I see a lot of talk about one world government and one world currency. If that happens, I don't think it's going to be a good thing for the United States. I really don't. I think it's going to be a problem. And then there's other things. But that to me is kind of a pressing concern. So if this helps you in any way, please give me a thumbs up. Leave me comments below and tell me what your thoughts are. Tell me I'm crazy. I don't really care. But if you have ideas, share them below because maybe somebody else can learn something from it. And that's what this YouTube is all about. Trying to share information, give people ideas that will better all of us. Thank you for watching. May God bless, and we'll talk soon.